Hello friends, welcome to VOWIAS. Welcome back to the mains test series discussion, and as you all know we are discussing test 4 and this is part 3 where we are going to discuss from question number 11 to question number 15. Hope you have seen the other parts. So do like, share and subscribe to our channel so that we will also get some energy to make more of such awesome content. So let's start with this 11th question. The 11th question is on the land acquisition strategy. Land, if you see, is one of the most important component for investment and development, because for investment the private people or the private companies need land. For the development, the government in fact needs land. So for everything, land is a major thing. Even for the people to do agriculture, they need land. To build their houses, they need land. So land is very, very important. That is why if you see after independence, the land reforms was very important. The land reforms, they also started even after independence, because before that, during the British time, we had the zamindari system, mahalwari system and all, and land was commoditized. People did not have land. So this land reform started after the independence, though we still did not finish these land reforms, but this new kind of strategies for land acquisition and all are very important. So the land acquisition strategy, if you see, recently the single agency or government body consolidates small land parcels into large parcel. That is the recent strategy which the governments are using. So it is provided with the infrastructure, and all the people, in fact, they are provided with the infrastructure, and a sizable land portion of the redeveloped land is given to the original owners after deducting some portion of cost of infrastructure development. Currently, this type of scheme, this type of land acquisition strategy is there in Delhi and Andhra Pradesh. And this is one of the most successful one, where people voluntarily have given land, and there are very less court cases on these kind of strategies, because people are also happy, because at the end of the day they are also getting the redeveloped land. They are also being made part of this whole development process. So if you see the benefits of this land pooling, for the landowners, they get benefited by the increase in the land value. So their land value gets increased, they will also become rich. They will get access to the sustainably better infrastructure, hospitals, schools. So overall development will happen. The conversion of irregular parcels into plots of regular sizes and shapes, because if you see, most of the farmers in India, they are small and marginal. So about 86% of farmers are small and marginal. So if you see, and all the lands, one of the most important problem in the land in the area of land, if you see, that is small land holding size and irregular shapes and sizes. But small land holding and irregular shapes and sizes will not help in the development of any infrastructure. They need huge lands. So what will happen is that this land pooling will consolidate all the lands, and it will make the land into a regular shape and size, which can be used easily by the infrastructure, by these companies for developing the infrastructure. So that is the thing. That is the second one. Next, for the government, this is also advantageous, because initially they don't have to pay any huge sum of money to acquire the lands, because the people are getting the land. They will be getting this redeveloped land later on. So the government don't have to pay anything in the initial phase, and the approach would face relatively less resistance by the landowners, because they are treated as investors in the developmental projects. It fast tracks traditional land acquisition process while addressing the associated social concerns. The increase in property prices leads to a higher tax base for the government. All these are the advantages. Now, what are the challenges? Any scheme or anything will definitely have some challenges. What are the challenges? The first thing is whether proper consent for land pooling is there or not. This is a major challenge, because at least there will be few people who don't want such things. So that is the thing. And also there are a lot of political affiliations that will be involved. A lot of political parties will get involved. So things will become very complex. Next, the compensatory packages sometimes are insufficient for the landless, because there will be laborers who will be living in those areas. They will not have land. They will be just working in those lands. So what about them? What about these landless people? That is an issue. And also there are a lot of inconsistencies in the land pooling, and a lot of if you see, a lot of legal issues are also there. It is also very difficult to apply for land pooling in the congested urban areas. This is very difficult. In rural areas it is fine, but in urban areas it is very difficult. And restarting farming on reconstituted plots incurs high cost, as new farm equipment must be bought. Because even though these farmers, they get the land back after development, they will not be able to do the agriculture, because during this time of development, lot of activities will be going on in the land, and the land will not be, or the land will become uncultivable. Also, if for any reason, if the land is returned to the farmers will need a lot of time to make the land very efficient for the agriculture. So that is also an issue. And the mechanisms under the right to fair compensation and transparency in the Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Act of 2013 adds complications like the social impact survey, the high rate of compensation, the caps on acquisition of multi-crop and agricultural land. All these things are there. So these things also need to be addressed for the success of this land pooling scheme. Right. So these kind of things, if you write in the exam, these kind of examples, these kind of land pooling strategies, the pros and cons. So this will make your answer a very good answer. So normally, if you see, you will definitely find a question on this land reforms. So whenever there is a question on the land reforms, these kind of pooling schemes and all, if you can give as an example, that will add a lot of value to your answer. Now let's look at the next question. The next question is on the privatization of the public sector banks. So this privatization is something which is making news in the last couple of years because of various reasons. Because the government is planning to privatize a lot of public sector banks. The government is planning to privatize a lot of public sector companies. So this privatization is very important for us from the examination point of view as well. So here we have to now start looking at the need for privatization. Why the government want to privatize? That is the first thing where we have to start. The first thing is the control and interference by the government will prevent these public sector banks from staying competitive in the current environment. The high level of autonomy will facilitate faster decision making, because the red tapeism is something which we will see in all the public sector companies. So this is also there. So this in fact, it will stop these companies from taking any risk, and also it will reduce the speed of decision making, which does not help these banks. Also, the next thing is that the private players, they will have capital for innovation, and they will focus on bringing more new products. So that will help in the development of the bank, and also it will help the people to get good service. The asset quality and efficiency of debt coverage of the private sector banks are better than the public sector banks, because the public sector banks have a lot of compulsions to give loan to specific people, which are ordered by these politicians and all. So they have to follow this politician's order, and because of this, a lot of these big people, they don't pay the money back. They don't pay these debts back. For example, Nirav Modi, Vijay Mallya, all these examples are there in front of us. The private banks are operating in a creamy places, the cherry picking customers and the PSBs with the difficult markets in the poorer districts. That means if you see in the urban areas where there are more profits, you will see more private sector banks. So if you talk to the people, especially the people who are working in these big companies, maybe Amazon, Google, or all these companies, and if you see the accounts what they are using, most of them will be using these private banks. They will be using these private banks, maybe ICICI or HDFC, HSBC, all these things. But they will not be using these public sector banks like SBI and all, because of the poor service. And also another thing is that these big banks, big government banks, they don't have presence in these urban areas. Mostly they are in the rural areas. This is also a major issue. Right. Next, high degree of professional management in the private banks, and also huge human capital. And the banks need additional capital to maintain capital adequacy ratio, especially the public sector banks. And for this, the government is pumping the money. So when the government pumps money, that is a major concern if you see. Next, what are the concerns associated with the privatization of PSBs? There are a lot of concerns. First thing is, it may lead to the financial exclusion of the weaker sections of the society. The next thing is, the privatization of PSBs will remove the sovereign guarantee behind PSB deposits and make household savings less secure. The third thing is, the failure of the bank will have tremendous contagious effect. Next, high NPAs are common for both public and private sector banks. So recently, we have seen this Chanda Kochar issue of ICICI. The collusion between the ICICI and Videocon, that has come into picture. Right. So even the private sector banks are not perfect. There are a lot of issues even with the private sector banks. So that has to be addressed first. One-time settlement portals and the platforms, the e-debt recovery tribunals, they need to be put in place for the online recovery. Right. So all these things have to be done. Along with this, Along with this, in the exam, it's always better to write way forward also. After showing the problems, after talking about the importance and showing the problems, the way forward will become very important, especially the 15 marker questions. So in the 15 marker questions, if you can write the way forward, then definitely you will get a very good, in fact, your answer will look very good in the eyes of the evaluator. So definitely you'll get good marks. Okay, so keep your eye on that. Next, inflation targeting. The 13th question is on inflation targeting. So see, there already yesterday we have seen a static question on inflation. On inflation we have seen a question. The cost push inflation and the demand pull inflation. Now here the question is on inflation targeting. Inflation targeting, if you see, it helps in long-term planning for public and private entities and in policy formulation. There will be redistribution of income and wealth between different groups in the society. There will be high inflation and it benefits some groups at expense of others. It provides certainty and boosts lender confidence. So that is the reason the inflation targeting is important. You see, here for these kind of questions, maybe you can start your introduction with definition of inflation. After that, inflation targeting is very important to control the inflation. Why? Then you can just write importance and you can just write 2-3 points. It's always better to write these kind of things, these kind of extra information in a diagrammatic way. Because this will save your space. Okay. Next, the main thing which is asked, what are the things that are required for inflation targeting? So inflation targeting requires the following. The first is ability of central bank to conduct the monetary policy with some degree of independence. Next, willingness and ability of monetary authorities not to target other indicators like the wages, level of employment or exchange rate. Inflation targeting framework in India was initiated through Inflation Targeting Agreement of 2015, which further culminated into the amendment of RBI Act of 2016. And next, the Act adopted year-on-year changes in headline CPI as a measure of inflation target, and the target was fixed at 4% with an upper and lower tolerance of 2%. That means, so as you all know, we are using CPI as the headline CPI as the measure of inflation, and in this also we have fixed a tolerance limit of 4 plus or minus 2%. So all these things we are just writing. And the Act mandated methodology for the Monetary Policy Committee. We can even talk about this briefly about this Monetary Policy Committee. It sets the interest rates headed by the governor. All these things we'll write. And in case of failure, the Act also lays down that RBI will give the reason for the failure. It will take remedial steps, and also it will estimate the time within which the inflation shall be controlled. All of these things are there. So here, in brief, this Act we are writing. Okay, the Act we are writing, and also the provisions of this Act. Already we have written the importance and what are the prerequisites, and then about the Act and its components. Right, and also you can also talk about this escape clause. Okay, so these are the things about this answer. Next, the 14th question. The 14th question is on government budgeting. So government budgeting, if you see, it happens every year. Every year the government presents this annual financial statement in front of the parliament, and that is nothing but the government budget. What are the objectives? The objectives are allocation of resources, redistribution of resources, ensuring that the level of demand is there in the market so that there will be full utilization of the labor, because if there is demand, there will be more production, and when there is more production, there will be utilization of labor, right? So all these things are interlinked. So the government ensures that all these things, there is investments that are flowing in, there is level of demand that is there is more money with the people. So all these things are ensured by the government through this budgeting. So importance of budgeting, you can just, if it is not asked specifically, towards the right hand side you can just draw a small box and write these importance here: allocation, redistribution, ensuring demand, and all these things towards the right hand side like this. Okay, next, the components of a budget. So in the budget, if you see, there are two important components. The first is the revenue budget, and second is the capital budget. Current financial year only are included in this revenue budget, and the things which deal with the assets and liabilities, they come into this capital budget. So these things briefly we'll write. And next, the revenue. In the revenue budget, the revenue receipts and revenue expenditure are talked about. The revenue receipts, they are further divided into tax and non-tax ones. The revenue expenditure, the salaries, all these things we will write. The various expenses, day-to-day expenses of the government and the departments. Next, the capital budget. In the capital budget, the loans that the government receives, right? All these things come under this, under capital receipts. Okay, that is investments, the profits, all these things come under. And in the capital expenditure, the spending of the government on the infrastructure, the physical and financial infrastructures, all these things come under this capital expenditure, right? And also mostly these things. Okay. So if you just go through the previous year papers, you will find these kind of questions which are being asked frequently. So be very clear, have a very clear idea about these components and all. At least if you can have a brief idea, like, yeah, if there's a question asked on budgeting, I'll write these components, these examples. If you can just have this kind of brief idea, it will become very easy for you in the exam, because definitely at least 3 questions will be coming, 3 to 4 questions will be coming on the static part in the mains in GS3 paper. So if you're confident with the static, because already you're reading for prelims, and if you can just have this idea, so what are the things that you're going to include, then this will definitely help you in the exam, right? Now let's look at the 15th question, which is on the flexible exchange rate. So in the exchange rate, there are 2 things: fixed exchange rate and flexible exchange rate. Fixed exchange rate is the exchange rate where the central bank determines it, that is called as fixed. Whereas in the flexible exchange rate, it is the market forces of demand and supply which will determine the exchange rate, that is called as flexible. So the monetary policy regime where the prices of currency related to other is determined by the market based on supply and demand, in contrast to the fixed exchange rate which the government entirely determines the rate. So currently India have this flexible exchange rate mechanism because everything is determined by the market. The increase or decrease in the demand of goods and increase or decrease in the value of dollar, that will directly impact the rupee. So we have a flexible one. Earlier, before the 1991 economic reforms, we used to have this fixed exchange rate regime where the government used to determine this exchange rate. Okay. So in the completely flexible exchange rate, the central bank do not intervene in the foreign exchange market. So when there is demand for the foreign goods and their services, then there will be increase, or you can say the demand for rupee decreases and the value of rupee reduces. So all these things will be there in the market. And so here if you see, it is clearly given, when there is demand for foreign goods and services increases, example due to increase in international travel, then the demand curve shifts upwards and right to the original demand curve. This increase in demand for foreign goods and services result in a change in exchange rate. So this is the thing. So in short, what is happening is that there is demand for these foreign currencies. Rupee demand is less. Rupee demand is less means rupee will lose value. That means if you are getting 80 rupees for $1, for $1. So what will happen when the rupee demand decreases? You will be getting, or you have to spend 84 rupees for $1 or 85 rupees for $1. These things will happen. Okay, so we have to have a clear idea about these things. Now, what are the factors that are influencing the appreciation and depreciation of rupee? The first is imports and exports, that we will write. Along with that, the speculation. What is mean by speculation? So, as you all know, we have the stock market where a lot of foreign companies also come and invest. A lot of Indian people also invest. So, because of speculations, what happens is that when the market says that, or when there is speculation that the dollar or the interest rate in US increases, when the interest rate in US increases, the money will start going out of Indian stock market. Okay, so just with the speculation that the dollar interest or the interest rate on dollar might increase, the money will move away from Indian stock market. That means the value or the demand for rupee reduces and demand for dollar increases. So rupee depreciates. That is the first thing. Next, countries with low inflation, that is high purchasing power, have stronger currencies compared to that with higher inflation rates. Next, domestic currency of a foreign country where differential interest rates are higher appreciates. But if these rates remain too high for too long, the inflation starts to creep in, resulting in devalued currency. Next, if the import grows faster than export, then the rupee will depreciate. For example, India, if you see, in India we import more than we export. So as the imports are more, the value of rupee will be less for India, because the demand for rupee will be less and the demand for other currencies will be more. And if the government debt outpaces economic growth, it can also drive up inflation, and this also will depreciate the rupee. Next, countries that have only positive or low current account deficit tend to have stronger currencies than those with higher deficits. Okay, so these are the things. So this is about the appreciation and depreciation of rupee. So these are the factors: the speculation, low inflation. Countries with low inflation generally they have stronger currencies. For example, US and all, you can say. Right. Next, the imports, exports, also the government debt. All these things influence the value. If you see countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, they are taking more of these foreign aids and all. The government debts are increasing. So when these things are happening, when the government debts and all these things are happening, the value of their domestic currency reduces. When the value of their domestic currency reduces, then they will be then they will be in this great trouble, because the domestic currencies are losing their value. So it will become difficult for them to purchase anything from the international market, because the domestic currency does not have enough value. So that's why if you see the high inflations in countries like Sri Lanka, Zimbabwe, Pakistan, the oil prices in these countries has increased tremendously, 300-400%. So all these things are the major reasons and major factors. Okay, and this is how we will write the answer as well. Right. So that's it, guys, for today. Tomorrow we will meet again and we will discuss rest of the 5 questions. Right. And as you all know, we are providing Vision Prelims test series, Mains test series and monthly magazine. You can subscribe to them by visiting our Telegram channel. Right. So that's it from my side. I'll meet you again tomorrow with the next set of questions. Till then, keep studying and stay tuned. Jai Hind.